This is an age of disruption, of profound revolutionary change.
What we're really asking ministers is to empower the ambassadors.
The only thing that you really push forth is the truth.
You don't see many women represented when it comes to the decisions as to how to handle the pandemic.
Good morning, and welcome if you're tuning in just now. And also, thank you very much for all of you joining us in the room. My name is Louise Guillot. I'm a sustainability reporter with Politico, and we'll continue this morning's session with a discussion on something I believe we can all relate to, which is getting our products repaired. Whether it's a laptop, a smartphone, a toaster, or a washing machine, I think we've all been confronted to this devices breaking up at some point, whether it's after a couple of months or a couple of years. And we're often left wondering what to do about that. Get it fixed or buy a new one. And the decision often comes down to a few parameters, the convenience, but also the cost and how expensive it is to repair it compared to the price of a new product. And the EU is actually trying to weigh in on your decision with this right to repair directive that is currently going through the legislative process, and which has been presented in March. And the EU is really trying to make it easier for you to fix your products and encourage a more circular economy, create local jobs as well. So during today's panel, we'll talk about these new rules that are being developed and how they will work in practice. But before we start, I'd like to remind you that you can ask questions using the Swapcard app. And also tweet or post about the event using the hashtag Politico Sustainable Week. So joining me on stage are three distinguished guests. Thank you very much. We have MEP René Repazi. You're from Germany and a member of the Socialist and Democrat group, and you're the lead MEP working on this directive. You're a member of the Internal Market and Consumer Protection Committee. Then we have Niels Berndt, Deputy Director General at the Directorate General for Justice and Consumers in the European Commission. Welcome. And finally, Hugh Kirk, Senior Manager for Digital Commerce Policy at the Industry Association Digital Europe. So I'll jump right in with my first questions. So the European Parliament's IMCO committee has adopted its position on the directive a few weeks ago, and it's supposed to go through a plenary vote, I think next week, if I'm not mistaken. So the position strengthens the Commission original proposal by notably expanding the scope of the right to repair directive to more products than just the ones covered by the eco-design rules. But it also sets some stricter conditions also for companies when they are confronted with a repair, like not to, when refusing repairing, for example, and pushes to be more transparent. By giving access to repair manuals, tools, and all that. And so I'd like maybe to start with you, Kirk, because I remember you were telling me recently that you were a little bit disappointed by some of the elements that are in the Parliament position. So I'd like to know why, and maybe we can, build on that.
Sure. Well, so as Digital Europe, we represent the whole spectrum of digital, including manufacturers of consumer electronics, and so this is a really important topic for us. And our members have had repair networks in Europe for decades, and they carry out millions of repairs annually. And we support the drive to boost repair, and we think the Commission's proposal is a good one. We think it's workable and proportionate. There's a lot of good things in there, and I think Mr. Repazi's report as well has raised a lot of interesting ideas, and it's right to question whether the Commission's proposal was ambitious enough. But when it comes to the link with the eco-design framework, for us, that's really crucial that that's maintained. For us, the eco-design framework is a really good one because it's done at a product level, and you consider lots of different, it's developed by experts, and it takes into account many different elements, so safety, but also sustainability, IP protection, and removing that link and having a universal repairability requirements or obligation, and deleting the timelines and those kind of product-specific specifications is concerning for us. It's going to undermine legal certainty, potentially undermine sustainability, and there are many knock-on questions there. So, it's right to question whether the eco-design framework, is broad enough, whether it does enough, but the solution is not to delete the link altogether. So that's, I think, our concern with Mr. Rapazi's report. But I think, as I said, there are lots of interesting ideas that he raises there as well.
So before I get to you, René, I'd like to ask you, Niels, because I know that also during the debate in committee, in the IMCO committee, the Commission had warned against deleting this link with the eco-design regulation. So, can you maybe explain to us a little bit more why it's an issue for the Commission? And, I'm wondering, isn't actually a good thing for consumers that, the right to repair goes beyond this product that are currently regulated and will be regulated in the future?
No, thanks a lot, indeed. We also want to be ambitious on making repair more the reality today, to keep products longer in use. That's absolutely critical. Therefore, whatever kind of additional ambitious idea comes from the Parliament or the Council, Commission very happy to look into this. Why do we nonetheless believe that the link between the subjective right to repair and the objective obligations of producers under eco-design are important? If a consumer has a vast subjective right of repair against either the seller or the producer, then goes to the seller and tells the seller, listen, my product broke, please repair it. Then the seller turns to the producer looks into the obligations for that product, says, listen, there is no obligation to make that product repairable for this part, therefore either I didn't design the product in the way that it can be repaired, or there are no spare parts, then this subjective right of the consumer will fall. And that could lead to the situation that the consumer at the beginning is very enthusiastic about repairing the product, but realizes his effort or her effort to get the product repaired does not lead to success, is frustrated, and then the overall dynamic and support for pushing repair in Europe will fall. That's why we believe this link is important, because where the producers have objective obligations under the product design legislation, then the subjective right to repair can be a good match. If, in terms of scope, it's different, then we have a problem. One point, therefore, if the eco-design, if, for example, for a certain product, then you have certain elements which are not covered by the eco-design implementing measures, let's then be more ambitious in terms of the aspects of reparability that are covered by the implementing measure. Same for the products. For example, I know that bicycles at the moment is one example that is being discussed. And bicycles are in the scope of the ESPR in the future. ESPR in the future will cover de facto all products. So in principle, the link between bicycles and the right to repair could be there, because ESPR covers bicycles. The problem is, at the moment, it's not in the foreseen to be covered in the implementing plan. Then you don't come to the implementing measure, and then you have the clash. So we believe the link makes sense, because then it makes sure that the consumer, when she or he goes to the seller or the producer, gets really the product repaired. If there are certain areas where we have to be more ambitious in terms of extent of reparability or scope of the products covered, then we have to address it under eco-design.
So, René, what do you respond to some of these critiques about your report?
Well, it's of course nothing new to me to hear this one, and I still have difficulties to follow this logic, because it basically assumes a good is only repairable if we have eco-design rules requiring it to be repairable. I find this cynical, because it basically means that we only have cynical producers that produce as much as they have to do under the legal requirements, if you talk about sustainability, and don't ever consider going beyond. But that's not market reality. Bicycles is the best example. If you think of a product that is repairable without any single eco-design regulation requiring it, it's bicycles. So we do not need eco-design in order to have products to be repairable. If we accept this fact, then we have a follow-up question. Who is actually in the lead when we talk about the right to repair? Is it the regulator coming up with eco-design rules specifying what is repairable or not? Or is it the consumer that wants to have products repaired instead of buying new cheap products or going for replacement products? And here I say it's the latter. If you look at the bigger picture, the problem that we currently have with our sustainable market economy, which is not that sustainable, is that we created a couple of decades ago a system within which the consumer in the first 2 years has to go for any product, not limited to eco-design products, for any product to the seller and ask, I have a problem, what can I do with it? And then the seller has to offer how to remedy it. A seller has no clue about repairing. A seller normally also doesn't have a repair network, but they have a lot of new products in their stocks. So they offer a new product, and the consumer takes the new product, being influenced by commercial advertising that says that the new generation of a particular kind of cell phone is the disruptive innovation of the last decades, although we just have a bit more of pixels on the screen. And hence, we created an economy that is built on every 2 years having a new product, which is feeding into our budgets, which is paying jobs, etc. It's a cynical growth model. So we have to change consumer behavior, and not by forcing them to go for repair, but to making repair the interesting alternative, basically as it was also a couple of decades ago. And if that is the idea, then we give an individual right to a consumer because it's a right, and not because it's something to remedy market failure. That's what eco-design is for. If designers and producers were not able to create repairable products, then we have to do regulation. And that's what eco-design does. But this has nothing to do with the right to repair, where a consumer who is used to have within the first 2 years, with whatever kind of product, a right to ask for repair, and then afterwards is limited, hardly to be understood. I agree with the Commission's argument that we should not lead it to a failure that too many products are not repairable. That's the reason why Parliament decided not to abolish the annex at all. But we should be more ambitious and say it's the right to repair that is in the lead, and take here bicycles already now in this particular appendix, not because I love bikes and I cycle a lot, but because it's a product that is repairable without eco-design, where we have a repair network, and where the right to repair is confirmed by real market economy developments.
Mm-hmm.
Can I briefly follow up on that?
Yeah, please, Niels.
Unless I'm disrupting your let's say, order of questions. No, fully agree that we have to even change the culture. We have to get away from this focus on getting the last mobile phone, exactly as you said. At the moment, we are replacing in Europe our smartphones every 2 years. If we use them for 3 years, we would bring down the carbon footprint by 30%. If we use them for 4 years, we bring the carbon footprint down by almost 50%. It's just one example, but a hugely telling example. We need to make sure that products stay in the market longer. We have to go to a culture which is not go for the latest brand, perhaps even cheap, but let's say buy new, buy cheap, but rather, let's say, reflect on which product you buy. It may be a bit more expensive, but it lasts longer. Over time, it's better for the consumer, but it's also better for the environment. So we clearly have to change the culture. That's why we also have a couple of supplementary elements in the proposal, but we even have to discuss with the consumers out there, the consumer organizations, this culture to really go for, let's say, the refurbished, the repair, etc. Mm-hmm. So insofar, I totally agree. On the other point, whether it's cynical, what the Commission did, of course, you will not be surprised that on this point I disagree. I'm an enthusiastic cycler, of course, living in Belgium. But do we have a failure in the bike repair market? So far, I didn't face any problem in having my bike repaired. Therefore, the question is, let's say, should we nonetheless maintain this logic between eco-design and the right to repair? But I take your point. Let's say it's a question of ambition.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And Indeed, and you said we need to get consumers also to change the way they go about repairing their devices, and just put that into their own logic when they buy a new product. And this directive also aims to open up the market for repair, improving access to spare parts, repair manuals, tools. And I know that's especially for products that are like smartphones that are a little bit complicated, maybe to repair for like someone like me. I have clearly no skill for that. I would need to go, of course, to a repair shop or to a producer or repair a cafe. But I know that this opening a little bit of the spare part markets for more products is creating some concerns, especially among industry actors. And so I'd like to get your perspective on this. Is it like, are you saying like it's too much, or too difficult to make it work in practice? How do you go about this?
So we're not against providing spare parts, tools, repair information to end users, but we want to have that conversation within the eco-design framework, because then you can take into consideration the other elements. So, for example, when you look at a specific product category, I don't know, a smartphone or a laptop, what are the parts that fail the most often? And so there you can make sure that the spare parts obligations are tailored to those parts that are going to fail most often, and also to the consumer expectations. You're probably going to keep a washing machine for a lot longer period than you are for a smartphone. So there are slightly different timelines as well, but also it takes into account safety considerations. For example, what are the really critical parts that actually you might want to restrict the tools or the information to make sure that it's done safely by professionals. So, for example, refrigerator coolants, where they may be toxic, or a cooling fan. If you don't install it properly, the device might overheat and cause a fire. So there are other considerations that we want to take into account. So that's why we would like to have those conversations, at a product category level within the eco-design framework. So we're absolutely not against, having more tools and parts available, but it should be negotiated at the product category level.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't know, René, if you want to maybe talk a little bit more about like what the Parliament put also in its position on this particular issue.
Honestly, the spare part issue is here really central, because ultimately, how will reality look like? Whenever you turn to the producer, in particular, if you have a producer that is not EU established, you will hardly turn towards them. So you will look for a repair shop in your area. That's how reality looks like. And the repairers, they compete then with their prices with a new cheap product from another third country. And repairers, they also need to earn money. Normally their labor cost is reasonable. What is not reasonable at times is the cost for spare part. And that's not where they make their profit on. They simply buy the spare part and they resell it during the repair. And here are ridiculous examples for certain product categories and for certain products. Not aiming at a particular kind of producers, but everybody knows those examples. A simple plastic part for repairing a dishwasher, and that is 100 or 200 euros expensive. Nobody can explain this to me. This is what I call a prohibitive price. That's the reason why we have included a rule in our Parliament's position that requires that spare parts have reasonable and non-discriminatory price, so that market authorities get now a right to look into how these prices are made. Moreover, it's getting even more tricky. There are certain coffee machines that you can only open with a particular kind of key, which is, of course, either not available or very expensive. There is software connected. There are hardware barriers, so that we require from producers that they do not impede repair. So even if we allow producers to have their monopoly on spare parts, which at some moment of time I find also difficult, since after 5, 6, 7, 8 years, 10 years, whatever, blueprints for those kind of spare parts should, in my eyes, be public, but that's not part of the right to repair. So if we already give them the right to have a sort of monopoly on spare parts, then they should use it in a reasonable manner, should not impede repair, and make prices that are not prohibitively right. Then we get a proper repair market where independent repairers have a business model that runs, and where repair is actually cheaper than certain not really sustainable new products from third countries.
And Niels, I'd like to bring you on here as well, because the issue of part pairing is indeed one that can prevent repairs. And so, where do we draw the line between actions that could be by some seen as prohibitive because they prevent independent repairers, for example, from performing the repairs in the first place?
Very important question. Overall, indeed, totally agree that we have to massively promote the repair market, not just by the initial producer and trader. They maintain a key role, but we also have to promote the independent repair market. Otherwise, this ambition of the proposal to keep products longer in the market will not materialize. For that, the availability of spare parts, but also repair information is absolutely essential. It's not a black and white situation, because obviously there are justified areas where the producer wants to protect IP rights, wants to protect the safety, the security of the product. So there are absolutely justified issues out there. But in reality, there is also abuse, clearly abuse, and that's why we have to push for a more aggressive availability of spare parts and repair information, while respecting, obviously, the justified needs for protecting the justified interest. Where precisely is the borderline? That's exactly one of the points we now start looking into in preparation of the trilogues between the co-legislator. Can you do it by referring to general clauses of IP protection, security, safety? Do you have to be more specific? That's something we are looking at. Part pairing is one example at case. Can be justified in certain situations, but may be abusive in others. So probably not a good idea to say part pairing is completely banned or is always allowed, but probably you need some kind of qualifying clause to say when is it justified to protect justified interest and when is it abusive.
What could be some of these examples
I think where you might want to look at introducing a limitation to the use of compatible parts is around the security and privacy concerns, particularly for consumer electronics. If you think about the technology in a smartphone that carries out the facial recognition or fingerprint recognition that then unlocks the secure part of your device and then is used to identify you as biometric data there. You don't want to give a blank check, so you don't want consumers just buying a random part online and then using it because you don't know what other implications there are. So there should be consideration around privacy and cybersecurity there. But in general, the use of compatible parts, I think is a good one.
Okay. No, and indeed, Niels, you were saying that you're preparing for trialogue. Just so we're still waiting for the Council of the EU and so the member states to come up with their position. And on that point, I'm wondering, René, because you've made this file a big priority for you, and you also will be running for re-election next year. And so I was wondering, do you believe it's realistic to find an agreement before the next EU election? And if so, what would be the deadline also for the trialogues to end?
Now, I think everything is realistic until it fails. So therefore, I consider it definitely realistic if the political will is going into the same direction. So we'll see what is going to be the political line of the Council. And since the Council is all the time complaining about the slow European Parliament, now this time we were finished 1 month before the Council, if they are now finishing ultimately. Having said this, the timeline is now, we are going to vote indeed next week on Tuesday in the plenary. I do not expect changes to the committee position, as committee position had a very broad support by parties, so we will also get very broad support in Parliament. And that's also a clear message to the member states. Well, this is not one of those nature restoration kind of files. This is a file where European Parliament is very much united. We have the first trialogue for now scheduled for the 7th of December. And according to our internal rules, we have to have it finished by the beginning of February. Reason is, everything needs to be translated in all EU member state official languages before we can vote in plenary. And last plenary is end of April. So that makes it that the timeline is ambitious, but in Parliament we finish our negotiations within 7 weeks. And therefore, I still think we can finish it here also within this period of time. Particularly, the standard question we will have in the election campaign is, what is the EU doing for us? Now then there can be this old stuff on roaming. I mean, that's a little bit old now. People come up with the common charger, okay. But honestly, if we have in the April plenary a vote on the right to repair, which is then in the media attention in the month of our campaign, and we say, what has Europe done for me? It has given us a right to repair that protects the environment and saves consumers money. Fantastic. So that is something we know in Parliament. This is something that the majority of European-friendly governments also know, and they still have a qualified majority in the Council. So therefore, I do see good chances to have this file closed before the elections.
Okay, and that's actually a perfect transition to the last topic I wanted to touch upon in the 10 minutes that we have left for our discussion, which is indeed looking into the future and the next EU election, and also what's next for the future Commission. Of course, the right to repair is part of a bigger puzzle of the Circular Economy Action Plan. We talk about eco-design, the eco-design regulation, but also the directive on empowering consumers for the green transition, the one on green claims. And so, Niels, I'd like to ask you, is that puzzle now complete, or is it something still missing that the next Commission needs to work on?
Thanks a lot. Allow me just one further point on finalizing this file. In terms of timing, I agree. Feasible, full support from the Commission side, but there's one further item which will be difficult in the negotiations, and that is the question whether during the guarantee period you give priority to repair compared to replacement. Because at the moment, consumers, if something breaks, during the guarantee period have the choice, do I repair, do I replace? And at the moment, reality is consumers and sellers agree on we replace. It's easier, it's faster, no hassle, we replace. Commission had proposed to give priority to repair over replacement. Parliament supports that idea, Council firmly against. If you abandon that hierarchy of repair over replacement, then you need other tools to make the repair really interesting and attractive for the consumer. Otherwise, the consumers will not go for the repair. And that's where the question of incentives then comes in, where we will have to discuss then about a longer guarantee period. Was not in the Commission proposal because we had the priority of repair over replacement. But if that should fall in the negotiations, we need strong incentives, and therefore a new legal period of guarantee is important. Exists already in some member states, but we have to talk about it. Possibility to get a replacement product while the repair is done. Who of you can live without your smartphone, your PC, for 2 or 3 weeks? Good luck. Well, you may have your second or your third smartphone, but that's not necessarily the vision we have in mind. So you might need a replacement product and some other elements. So that's one important point we need to discuss. That will not be easy, but still something realistic to conclude. Then the question, what about the future? Then we have, with the eco-design, which also should be completed in this mandate, the complementary right to repair, the green claims, which will not be completed in this Parliament, in this Commission, but will move to the next one, and the empowering consumers for the green transition, which is completed. In my view, we have all legal instruments in place, including the green claims, which will have to complete it in the future. All legal tools in place to make sure that the significant contribution of the private consumption to bring down the carbon footprint is in place. Then the priority is really making sure that those different pieces of legislation then reach reality, are correctly transposed and effectively applied on the ground. Mm-hmm. And that's something where we are then also looking very much forward to cooperating with the industry to see, perhaps we can anticipate certain elements, perhaps we can even see how consumers get easier information beyond the legal requirement. That's one point where I come back to you also. Of course, we will then also continuously working with industry that are willing to go beyond the legal requirements. The legal requirements have to be effectively applied, and that will be the number one priority. Mm-hmm. But we still can see whether with some industry partners we can go beyond.
And so I'd like to turn to you. Maybe if you want to respond to some of what Neil said, but also like answer to your question. You know, what you would like the next Commission maybe to prioritize.
Sure. Maybe just coming back on the hierarchy of remedies as well. I mean, we also support that repair would be the default remedy. I think one of the things that we regret wasn't in the Commission's proposal and also hasn't been, or isn't in the Parliament or the current Council text is a role for refurbished products. I think for us, replacement of a defective product with a refurbished one offers a consumer with an immediate solution. It actually can have even greater sustainability benefits because you can collect together defective devices, ship them off, repair them together, and you get economies of scale. As well, and a refurbished device, meets high standards as well. So it's a shame that that wasn't included in any of the text there. If we look at the extension potentially of the legal guarantee, some kind of one-time extension, maybe linked to what they have in France, where there's a 6-month extension when a repair is carried out, would make sense. But a longer one starts to have other implications for independent repairers because during the legal guarantee period, the original equipment manufacturer has a monopoly. So you're actually, keeping out independent repairers from the discussion. And then as we go forward towards the next mandate, Digital Europe actually just published a manifesto for 2030. And when it comes to sustainability and these topics, I think what we need to do is make it easy for businesses to do the right thing. One of the main concerns that our members have is really the proliferation of national labeling requirements, etc., which as we're trying to reduce the size of packaging for sustainability reasons, we're now having to kind of introduce more space for different labels. So we want to make sure that we can make use of digital tools like the digital product passport to convey information to consumers and also cover our compliance requirements.
René, maybe coming back to you, maybe if you want to talk a little bit about the legal guarantee period and the extension of that, because I know that's something that the Parliament did not touch in its position, but there is a 1-year extra guarantee after the repair. So, why did you decide for that second option and not, extending the legal guarantee period? And then we can talk about like what you wish for the next election.
Sure. Given that the two other speakers nevertheless brought in a topic that wasn't asked, namely the hierarchy of remedies, I will nevertheless react to this. First of all, the Commission proposal on the hierarchy of remedies so that there is an obligation for repair unless it's more expensive than the replacement product. It's building on the idea that we basically oblige consumers to go one way or another. I don't think it works like this. It works with incentivizing consumers to change their behavior. Yet, in the logic that we currently have, it is the seller who can choose whether there's going to be a new product or a repair, and the consumer has to rebut on the basis then of a significant inconvenience. And that is what we have introduced. So what the Parliament position does, in contrast to the Commission position, is we're basically taking away the choice of the seller to offer a new product instead of repair, but give the consumer all the rights to rebut this and nevertheless choose for a new product. So in that sense, we are returning to the structure that the directive has taken, only limiting the space for the seller. On the second one, because the refurbished also came up, this is a weird argument. It is disguised by sustainability, but we are looking here at the period of 0 to 2 years. There, repair or replacement is owed if the product was defectious at the moment the buyer got it. So it was a fault on the manufacturer's side. So the manufacturer made a mistake, and as a consequence, the manufacturer can give an old product, a refurbished one, to the consumer. That sets some very weird incentives. So it should remain that the alternative is a new product, because that is what was owed from the beginning, and it was the producer's mistake that it was defectious. Later, if the consumer chooses for repair, please do so, and that should be strengthened. And part of this strengthening is indeed the question of guarantee period. Now we have the minimum guarantee period. An extension of this minimum guarantee period as a minimum harmonization. There are member states like the Netherlands where the guarantee period is covering the lifespan of a product. So member states are different in here. So I don't think that there is a need to extend this. Plus, we see in research, when we look at the defect that was at the beginning, that it materializes itself many instances within the first year, in actually basically all instances within the first 2 years. So extending this guarantee period doesn't add much. Particularly, we have some member states who do it differently. We also have to see that the problem with the minimum guarantee period is that who has to prove that the defect was there at the moment of purchase? Within the first year, this is presumed for the consumer, so that actually we have a minimum guarantee period of 1 year, since afterwards a producer will always say it's your stupid consumer who didn't do it properly, especially if you try to repair it yourself. So from that moment on, it's actually gone. So I don't think we win much on the minimum guarantee period, but we win more if we basically say, okay, consumer, now you have a choice between repair and a new product. If you go for the new product, you get the full additional 2 years, fantastic. If you get a repaired one, that's it, maybe until the end of the initial 2 years. So what's the incentive here? So therefore, the consumer wants to have some additional securities that if he gets a repaired product, that there is proper competition with a new product. I initially proposed therefore 2 years, because that's just the same as if it were a new product. Now we ended up with 1 year, but in my eyes it must at least be 1 year so that consumer behavior changes. But it won't be only legal guarantee periods that will change consumer behavior. There has to be the question of a replacement product during repair, which can then be a refurbished one. There has to be a question on whether you can actually turn to producer in order to get it repaired within the first 2 years. There's a question of financial incentives, repair bonus as we have it in France. We want to require that also from all the member states. And in that sense, there's the outlook into the future, but maybe you want to ask the question first before I monologize.
Yeah, and also I'm also looking at the iPad, but I can't see if there are questions. I'm just looking at some, bear with me for a second. Otherwise, if we have someone in the audience who'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand and we'll give you the floor. I don't see anyone. Don't be shy. It's okay. All right. I'm sorry. I can't see the... Here it is. Thank you very much, Agathe. So we actually have a couple of questions, so I'm going to put them to you. One is from Benjamin Diony. I'm going to read it out loud. So has the software hindering of a repair been taken into account? You've partly already answered that question with when we talked about part pairing, but maybe Niels, if you want to, because it wasn't the original Commission proposal.
Yes, exactly. Let's say yes, software as well as hardware restrictions are taken into account. Let's say if you buy a product which also includes software elements, then of course the repair obligation would cover also the software parts, and also, let's say, in the defensive way, so to speak, any kind of software which is restricting possibility of repair also would be covered. So yes, it is covered.
Okay, and we have also another question about the scope from Kieran Watkins, who asked in the report, in your initial proposal, René, motor vehicles were in the scope of the directive, and so Kieran asked, why was this dropped in the end?
Because there is no progressive majority in IMCO. The Renew is here on the right side. I need to compromise.
Okay. Right. So maybe I can ask you also about like the future and looking ahead to 2024. I mean, after the election, what do you think the new Commission should be focusing on? You know, we talked about the circular economy puzzle. What do you think are some of the missing pieces?
I think indeed, if we have the legislation done, which is complex enough, but if we have it done, we have basically done the legislative work, and then we are in the implementing phase. We should also give the Commission the time to properly implement and observe what is happening. What we want is a change of a system of behavior. This is not done overnight. But I think we have now set the right steps into motion. And also the Commission cannot do everything alone. Member states are here as well, having duties, as well as other elements of the the public that has to support this. But I see also those initiatives. So, for example, in the Netherlands, we have an association of small and medium-sized enterprise repairers, Techniek Nederland. They are working together with the public authorities on creating a repair platform as proposed by the Commission even before we have the right to repair, because they think we need to match it and at the same ensure that there's quality for product safety reasons. So if we can make clear for product safety reasons, don't be afraid to repair, all good, which also takes away some arguments of the industry. So there's a lot that has to be done in the implementation, and we have to basically not think by having just voted on a law, things will change. There has to be a clear path towards implementation. I think the Commission can do still one thing, not DG Just, but one that is dealing with taxes. There's a VAT directive, and the VAT directive has an annex on VAT reductions, and they give a benefit to the repair on bicycles and on clothes, and that can be actually extended to all repair services in order to also make repair more attractive. It's a small thing, but it's I think a part of it that can make repair overall more interesting. So this is the legislative part, but from a political point of view, we have to make clear that there is a change of system. We must make clear that also our economies will change. If our product cycle extends from 2 to 4 to 5 years, it means less products, but more, but qualitatively better products will be produced. That has implications on the way of how our economies are organized. So therefore, it has implications for many other policy fields, and that politicians have to take into account. That's my job, and the Commission's job is to implement, and I want to give them the time to do so, although I will, of course, observe closely what they are doing. And I basically also bet on the Commission that whenever they have a new eco-design thing negotiated with the industry, that the delegated act to expand the annex will follow automatically, and we don't all the time have to force it in plenary that this is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. And I see we have a couple of extra minutes, so if you still want to ask questions, please raise your hand and we'll give you the floor. Yes, at the back. Maybe can you just stand up so that we can clearly hear you and state your name. A microphone is just coming your way. Yeah, thank you very much.
I am Sayeda Rizvi from University of Antwerp, and my research is on inclusion of diversity in sustainable transitions. My question is about, as René has said, that the repairing, the people who repair, they need to be, trained and also give. It's a question of efficacy. Like if a product is broken, if I find it difficult to get it repaired, it's difficult for me, and I will go for a replacement of it sent to the company that manufactures it. But if there are shops or certified repairers available everywhere, and they are kind of subsidized in some way or the other, then people find it easy to get those things repaired. I think this question of efficacy and availability of somebody who can repair the electronics or other things like clothes and shoes is also very important, because if we go on high streets here, we hardly find people who are experts in repairing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Indeed, and I think that your comment ties also to the issue of VAT and encouraging also more sustainable services. So thank you very much for your comment. I'd like just to turn to you for the last minutes that we have, because indeed this commission has put forward a large number of new legislative proposals on this, and I was wondering how the industry also is reacting to that, and whether there are concerns about overlaps or loopholes that needs fixing, and that could be the task for the next one.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot of work to be done on the industry side now to implement all this stuff as well, and there's a lot for us to get our heads around, and that's why I also said we need to kind of make it easy for companies to do the right thing. We need to have a green single market, because there is so much national divergence when it comes to sustainability requirements, labeling, information, etc. That's something that really needs to be tackled, but also give us time to implement. We're opening up the Sales of Goods Directive after it was only just closed in 2019, and the member states have only transposed it in 2020, 2021. So there's a lot of change when it comes to consumer law as well. So I think now it's time to focus on implementation. And then just coming to the point that was raised by the lady then, also I think we need to look at boosting skills when it comes to repair. Something that I hear from my members is there is a shortage of professionally trained repairers. And I think also there's a piece there, the Commission has promised to develop a quality standard for repairers. So this is something that needs to be taken forward and fleshed out so that consumers can trust repairs that that are certified by the Commission's new standard, and we know that they're going to be carried out safely.
When can we expect this quality standard, Niels? Do you know?
Well, we first adopt the proposal by early next year, then we start working on it. So let's say preparations could start sometime next year.
Sometime next year. Okay. Well, thank you very much all for your insights. So this concludes our discussion on the right to repair. I'd like to thank our distinguished speakers for joining me on stage. I think we can give them a round of applause. Thank you also for your questions. I'd like to ask the audience here in the room to please stay seated, as the next panel discussion is going to start in just a few minutes. It will be on the topic of greening the microchip supply chains with my colleagues Laurens Cerulus. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your